Ujai, everybody. Welcome. This is another episode of the Gator Gates podcast. We're happy to be with you again here tonight. My name is Kajijim Saikapta. I'm joined here with
Kinibashu Saikapta
and our guest.
Name is Joseph Campbell, also known as Sekhem Ra Min Maat.
So, before we get started, we'd like to give a special shout out to the forces in the non-material, particularly Master Nemnabla Musa Mordenebig, who is the founder of the Earth Center. We'd also like to give a shout out to my ancestors, his ancestors, and your ancestors as well, and all of the other forces in the non-material, whether it be deities, genies, entities, whatever it be. We just like to shout them out. And we'd also like to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Sauce Hot Sauce. So Sauce Hot Sauce started in 2007 when a group of traveling students were in Africa, and they were thinking of ways to support charitable causes. So one of the students happened to be an artisanal hot sauce chef, and right then and there, Sauce Hot Sauce was born. So they support charitable causes by giving a portion of their proceeds to help support misplaced families in the Fada and Goma region of Burkina Faso. So please get yourself some sauce and support it because it supports good causes. Now, we have a guest tonight, and we really want to, give him the floor to kind of let us know who he is and tell his story.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. First, I would like to say I give thanks and praises to the ancestors. As the brother opened up, we always do that because it's important. It's important that we realize that we're not alone. No matter how alone we may feel at different times, we are not alone. We might feel lonely, but we're not alone because there might be some of you that believe, and there might be some of you that's on the precipice of belief. There might be some of you that want to believe, and let me tell you, the ancestors are real. And if you haven't experienced it, it's only because you haven't opened your eyes, you haven't opened your heart, and you haven't cleared your mind. So I like to give thanks for those ancestors, and like we say in the Kemetic tradition, we also give thanks and praise to the Father, Mother, Creator who comes to us in the form of the glorious laws of nature. So again, I said I was born Joseph Campbell, and I gained a great understanding about life through the Kemetic legacy. And maybe I would say in 2000 I went through initiation, and that's where the name Sekhem Ra Min Maat came from. I would say that I was like many other people. I grew up in a kind of traditional way. My family's from the islands, and in the islands, some of you know, Christianity has a strong hold. Specifically,
what island we talking, Joe?
We talking Grenada. Grenada in the West Indies.
Oh, I could tell you Grenadian.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the Grenadian spot.
Yeah, we got a bit of charm, So, growing up, like when my parents were born and raised in the island, so they're traditional, and I had the influence of the Catholic Church. I'm a product of Catholic school. I was an altar boy when I was young.
Wow.
I did all that, so I understood that form of Christianity, and I would say it's almost a blessing because honestly, at that age, just being young, I was in Essex County here in New Jersey, in Orange, predominantly black neighborhood at the time, and the Catholic Church, we just got white teachers, we got white priests, we got the white nuns, and literally inside the church that's associated with the schools, Our Lady of the Valley, in the church, on the dome, there's a picture of a white God with a long white beard sitting on a throne. There was nothing but white angels, the white cherubim and stuff. And I'm young, right? So I'm being taught. They had the picture of white Jesus. There's a white Jesus. I grew up in that.
If it ain't white, it ain't right.
Hey, And my parents are from the islands, though. So I'm like, there's something going on here. I'm like, culturally, the island has that influence there, but there was always the Rastas. So my first rebellion, my first step into asking questions, really Rastafarianism gave me that outlet because
As it was for most of us.
Yeah, I had a cousin too in the family who was a Rasta, and he was just different. He was a black sheep. But mixing that together with my experience in the school, I'm looking up and it just don't make sense to me, man. I'm looking at a picture of a purely white God, all these white angels, and everything's just white. And just for me I'm mixed. I'm my mother and father from the islands, but if you can't see, I'm light skinned. So you light skinned, you obviously mixed somewhere down the line. I don't deny that whatsoever. I've learned to accept every aspect of who I am, my ancestors from both lines. But it was just a conflict. You know, it was a conflict. And that started this journey of just asking questions. And so at some point, when people ask me how did I get introduced to the Kemetic legacy, I would say this, it almost seemed divine. Like, it almost seemed divine. And without being too lengthy, I will tell you this story as an example of how life connects and showing you how it came to the Kemetic legacy. When I was a baby, my mother had bought me this necklace. It was silver. It was a silver rope chain necklace, and it had a little eagle on it. I was just drawn to this eagle. Like, it had its wings spread out. I was just drawn to it. And it was a small little rope chain, but that was the first piece of jewelry I ever had. I'm just drawn to it. I don't know why, I'm just drawn to it. Fast forward, I'm in high school. I done lost that chain long time ago. Broke in a fight I had with my sister. You know, kids, we fight with our siblings when we're young. I did all of that. In high school, my mother had a friend, a coworker, who was selling gold. She had a connection with some, it was real legit gold. It sounds crazy, but it was real legit gold. Wow. Her coworker friend is selling gold, and my mom buys me his birthday gift. What is it? It's a gold rope chain. It has the same emblem, the same
bird.
eagle, the same bird. And I'm talking about, I'm in high school now. This is about 15, 20 years later, same bird. So now let's talk about this.
You still have that chain?
I did up until recently. I did up until recently, where I end up losing it, not through any kind of negligence, but through situation in life. But what it did teach me is that you never really lose anything. Like, you know, we hold on to things in life, and even things that have sentimental value, as that piece did. It did, and I had to deal with the loss of it. And in dealing with that loss, I really learned that even as much as it meant to me and as much as it has always been a piece of my life, losing it was no loss, you know? But that piece kept coming back around. My uncle had, again, this eagle. It was just the concept of spread wings and flying, this eagle. My uncle had a statue in his house, and I was attracted to that. So let me bring this together. What I've learned in life is that oftentimes what we consider to be insignificant events, and we might consider them to be unattached events, oftentimes if you pay attention, you'll see how these things come back together and they sew themselves together. Later on in life, I learned about Heru, and I learned about the totem of Heru, and one of the expressions of Heru is the falcon, the hawk, with its wings spread. And I've seen these images, and literally, whether that was an eagle or a hawk, it was Heru. From the time I was young, I saw this thing, I was just drawn to it. I lost it, it came back in my life. Not only did it come back in my life through this piece of gold, I just got introduced to the Kemetic legacy, and then the pieces start fitting together. So that's just a little bit of who I am, and I will express this even further. At an early age, I kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher. I saw the influence, and this is all stemming from the Catholic Church. So sometimes when you're in a situation where it might, you know, people might laugh at you and say, oh, you was in Catholic Church, or you was just around these white folks, or you was around the priest, and you don't have no, listen, sometimes being in those situations help you the most, because you get to see something that others may not see. So at an early age, I just knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Are you a teacher now?
I was. So I taught elementary school for 4 years. I was tenured in everything. I taught in a charter school down in Newark. I taught 4 years there, but quite honestly, when I was in college, the 4 years I was in college, I would do after school programs and I would do summer programs. Nice. So I started working out with, started working with the youth at that point, and then I graduated from college. I started teaching. I taught 4 years in the classroom with children. I taught all grades from 4 through 8, all subjects at one point or another, and then I taught adults for 3 years after that. But my calling was always to be a teacher, and so it was, that also taught me in order to teach, you have to humble yourself and allow yourself to be taught. And so it was the Kemetic legacy that kind of like answered some of those questions I had, having been raised under that Catholic umbrella. 'Cause like I said, certain things just weren't adding up to me. And it was through the Kemetic legacy and just the understanding that, the world is much more than what we've been shown. The world is much more, and reality is much more than we can even perceive.
So was there ever a point where you were like, okay, like this is how I've been raised, like this is what it's supposed to be? And you like, okay, like I'm gonna teach Catholicism to other people.
Nah, man, I never, like, listen, anytime, like, the biggest thing for me is anytime you tell me that there's one and only one way, it just doesn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, and I was being told that, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior, you're going to hell. Like, it's your soul. This is what I was taught. This is what I was told as a young child. And when I started to question these things, I got scared, man. Like, I was honestly scared.
It's a scary statement.
Yeah, I was nervous. Like, I was nervous because I wanted to believe, but, like, things just weren't adding up. And then to go against Jesus, like, man, good Lord, man, that's troublesome.
Yeah.
So you gotta, in this life, you gotta kind of have the courage. You gotta have the courage to seek the answers which come to you. Like, seek answers to the questions that come to you. Like, when you have these questions that come to you, they're coming to you for a reason, and I feel that it's partly your job to, listen, keep an open mind and pursue the answer. But no, at what really bothered me is just this idea that there's one and there's only one way. And that when you told me this, I said to myself, you mean to tell me all these people I've met from different walks of life.
Exactly.
That are doing righteousness. Like, they're good people, man.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They're helping people out. They're sacrificing. Nobody's perfect, but these are good people. You mean to tell me they're going to hell because they're not Christian? Like, it don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then you're the same person that's telling me that God created everybody. So God created everybody, and by your definition, this creator created everything. Created the different languages, created different cultures, different land masses.
The different gods.
Different gods, exactly. You know what I'm saying? So and that's where, like, my understanding is now, is like, when it takes a level of maturity to understand that God cannot be encapsulated. And I'm saying this even as someone who subscribes to Kemetic approach and the Kemetic philosophy, and I do not believe the Kemetic way is the one and only way to worship God and to understand God. No, it's a cultural expression which resonated with me. And what it has also taught me is that if you look back in the ancient days, it was never like there was understanding and there was sharing amongst different cultures and different religions. It was never my way is the one and only way. That's not how it was. Different religious groups would share with each other. They would take that knowledge back and they would bring it to their people. Because at the end of the day, like, religion was just really a facet of culture. And culture is much more than just religion.
So when would you say it really like switched though? Like, no, like, okay, there's something wrong with this one way ideology. Like, there's something going on here that I can't really put my finger on. But when was it, like, was it in high school or was it after high school that you were like, okay, I know that there's something wrong with this, but there's got to be something else out there, and now I'm searching for it.
But just to add on to that, because I really wanted to ask you, with everything he just said, like, at that point when it switched, what was the key factor in turning off the fear factor for you? Because I know that's the main point for a lot of people. It's like the fear factor. It's like, I don't want to go against what I've been taught. I don't want to go against what I've learned because I don't know anything else.
And you
so
lose
it's
your
unknown.
family, you lose your friends, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's real. I mean, listen, here's the thing as well, man. Even to this day, my family thinks I'm troubled. You know what I'm saying? My father is like a born-again Christian, man. You know what I'm saying? We just got into a disagreement the other morning because he wants to tell me how all this stuff going on in Israel and with the Hamas is like the Bible predicted it, and we're at the end of time. I can't stand that talk, man. We could talk about that later on too, but not to take away from the religious context of all that. But So I'm saying that just to say that when you walk this path, you have to accept the fact that, your family may not understand you. And you also have to understand that it's okay to live a life that other people don't understand. Because at the end of the day, it's you. This is your journey that you have to walk. Your family's not walking this journey. Your family ain't going to be the ones that have to stand up and face judgment. Your family's not going to be the one that have to make the decisions that you have to make in your life. So at the end of the day, it's your life. As much as your family loves you, you have to understand that you are not here to live up to your family's expectations. You're not here to make your family happy. Although we want to make our families happy, right? We want to bring honor to our family. We want our parents to be proud of us. But at the same token, we also have to understand, man, some of our parents don't know no better. They don't know any better. They been doing what they've been taught. And they raise us in the best way that they could, given the information that they have. But now, we have too much information, and there's too much availability and too much access for us not to ask the vital questions and have the greater understanding. Even if you're a Christian, I'm not knocking Christianity. What I'm telling you is have a deeper understanding of what you believe in. And if you go to the roots of Christianity, if you look at the Gnostics and the Gnosticism, you understand that Christianity had a foundation of wisdom. It's wisdom teachings. This man you call Jesus, there's something more there is what I'm telling you. So I don't want anybody to construe that I'm knocking Christianity, but what I'm telling you is that it is not the one and only way. There's valid truth in it, but no religion has a monopoly over the truth. And you have to know that, and you have to be okay with accepting that. No one religion has a monopoly over the truth. So now let's talk about me. I'll tell you a true story. This is a true story. So how did I know? When was the actual shift and when the change? I still resisted it. I knew there was something in Africa, right? So I still resisted it. So for me, like my branching away started with Rastafarianism. And even in Rastafari, it's still kind of safe in some regards because there's different groups in Rastafari. There's 12 tribes of Israel. There's Bobo Shanti, there's Nyabingi. There's different groups that have different understanding and different beliefs. Yeah. So
Nyabingi is they
priestly.
worship the priesthood. So they worship like the feminine aspect. Like there's a spirit actually called Nyabingi. So that spirit is the spirit that was said to have possessed Nani, like Queen Nani, who was the main slave revolter against the colonial system in Jamaica. So she was the one who led the slaves, which is my ancestors, like the Maroons. She led the Maroons to fight against the Spaniards, and then later on, again, the English. So that's the spirit they worship. And then you have the Bobo Shanti, which is with the understanding coming from like Ashanti, like Ghana, the areas in Ghana.
Do these like denominations of Rastafarianism still have that connection to like the biblical story and like Christianity?
That would be the ones he's talking about, the
like 12 tribes. Definitely 12 tribes.
They're the ones that are all about that. So that's different than you have Rastas who is like, we don't deal with that Bible stuff. And then you have the Rastas that's like cold hard Bible. I'm a Israelite, 12 tribe Judah, blah blah blah.
Okay.
So that's what I was saying. In some regards, it was still safe.
In
an aspect, because you have some Rastafari that don't deal with New Testament, but they'll do an Old Testament. You know, Book of Psalms and Solomon, and how Solomon had a relationship with Queen of Sheba, Makeda.
Some of them eat meat, some of them don't eat meat, some eat only fish, and it's a lot.
So within that it's a lot, and you know, then you also have just the naturalists, like that just are living in nature. You know what I'm saying, that reject society and kind of live that life. So I still like what really brought me closer is that I had started, it was in college, I was at a poetry reading, I read a piece up on stage, this brother came up to me afterwards and he was like, hey man, you seem like you might be interested in this. I got a teacher, he's teaching African martial arts. Like, you interested? Because I did like this cultural piece, you know what I'm saying? And I represented in college, man. I was roster, like when I had the thick locks, like, you know what I'm saying? I was that below my waist, you know. I had locks before it became
popular.
It was popular, you know what I'm saying? The only people that had locks back in the day are people whose family was from the islands, or you from Africa, or you just out there like that, but that, you know, it wasn't that common a thing. Like most people that had locks had an island connection.
We talking about like in the 90s?
Yeah, man, we talking about the 90s.
Yeah,
That's when I
yeah.
started. You know, so like for me, what end up, like, it was just inevitable. Like, I'm learning more about Rastafarianism, and Ethiopia keeps coming up. Ethiopia, because
Exactly.
Haile Selassie, you
Uh-huh.
know what I'm saying, was the emperor of Ethiopia, and I'm learning more about Ethiopia. I'm like, all right. And then I learned about Ethiopia was called Kush. And then now going back, I was at this poetry reading, and like all this is happening around the same time. I'm learning that Ethiopia was called Kush. And I'm at this poetry reading, doing this cultural piece, Rastafari, this, that, and the third. The guy comes up to me and he's like, you know, we got this African like master. He teaches African martial arts. It's called Kubagana and Gumi. Now, once again, I'm showing you how life, these little random pieces start to connect back. That was in 1999 when this guy came up to me and asked me if I was interested in coming to this class, learn some African martial arts. He told me that the teacher was also a priest. Teacher was also a Kemetic priest. And I was like, what's Kemet? Like, well, Kemet was the name of Egypt. I'm like, okay. It reminded me when I was back in high school in 95, I had a teacher. He taught me, he had an English class for freshmen. He was a brother. He was the only black teacher in the school I was in. But he was a conscious brother. He was a part of a group that worked with political prisoners. It was called Uhuru. They worked with political prisoners, and they were revolutionary. He was telling me about this African martial art. And that was in 95. I was a high school student. I couldn't get to the place. But fast forward, now I'm in college. 4 years later, I'm in college, get off the stage at a poetry reading, and this guy is coming up to me asking me about this and it was the same martial art. It was the same martial art that I got introduced to in high school, but I just wasn't old enough, and it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
Sometimes things come to you in life, and it's just not the right time for you to act upon it.
You know the name of the martial art?
It was Kubagana and Gumi. Now, Kubagana and Gumi is just a general term. Kubagana and Gumi is Kiswahili, and it means to fight with the body as a fist. It was basically a African martial art federation, like a representation of African martial arts in America that one of my teachers and like 2 other masters had put together.
And the guy the masters were from.
They were from America, but had learned in Africa and like different
masters or bastards.
Masters.
Bastards.
Yeah, the old dirty bastards. I trained with some old dirty bastards.
It sounds like he said bastards to me.
Yeah. No, the masters were like, they trained with people from Africa and so on. And you know, it was back in those times, those brothers, like, they grew up in a time where, especially in New Jersey, there was a big representation of black martial artists.
Really?
Especially in New Jersey. Yeah, I'm talking about they would go to the gym on the weekends and fight it out and challenge each other and all. It was a big kind of a vibe. But I digress a bit. Thing I want to point out is that in our lives, sometimes like we go through these things that just seem random. But if you just pay attention to the
synchronicity.
Events, man, the synchronicity, you'll start to see how things come together. So to make the shift, for me, it was really a process. It was something that took time. And what I really did, I prayed on it. Because I really felt like,
At that point, who was you praying to?
I was praying to God.
Whoever gonna listen.
Whatever God was, whatever God
Somebody
help me. Like, I couldn't pray to Jesus because I was questioning Jesus at the time. So I said, let me just go with good old number one God. Like, let me go with good old number one God, and let me pray to God and please, if I'm going wrong, and I really and this is leading to one of the first spiritual experiences I've ever had. I was in college. That's when it really happened. It happened in college phase for me. How old are you in college? I wasn't even 21 yet. You know, maybe like 18.
19.
Yeah, 18, 19 years old. And I always asked questions, man. That was the thing. Like I said earlier, just started out with questions. I always asked questions. And I knew the heart from which I was asking my questions, the intent. I wasn't trying to fall into any wickedness, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't going no evil way, but I'm just questioning things because what I was told is not adding up. And I know that there's something more to life than what I'm being told. So, all right, there was one night, it was my sophomore year actually. So let's give you some context. This is like 2001. I'm in the dorm room, and at this time, sophomore year, we had a suite. I went to Rutgers. Any shout out to Rutgers people, Rutgers, New Brunswick. We had a suite. It was 3 different rooms, 2 people to a room. That night, everybody was gone, and it was just me. See, the thing about me is that I've always been kind of not a loner per se, but I never felt the need to follow the crowd, and I'm always myself. So everybody else was out, going to frat parties, and I'm like, that wasn't me. That wasn't my scene. Like, the parties they went to wasn't my scene. I'd rather stay home than to go someplace I know I don't belong. I stayed home and I prayed, and I said, God, and this is what I'm telling anyone who's questioning it, like, pray. If you don't, you should be skeptical anytime you enter in something new. Like, that's natural. You should be skeptical. You should ask questions. But at some point, you got to pray. You pray and you live into the answer. You pray and you live into the answer. So that night I prayed. I prayed, and I really got on my knees and prayed because I felt like, I might be going to hell or something, questioning Jesus. That's how serious it was. I prayed.
Yeah,
And
the grip of Christianity, it spans very far.
Oh, it is. It is, man. To your soul. It expands down to, got you questioning your own soul.
Right.
And that night when I prayed, I said, listen, it's something simple as this. And you could do the same. I said, God, like, you listening, if I'm going in the wrong way, please steer me back in the right way. It was something as simple as that. If I'm going in the wrong way, please steer me back in the right. But if I'm going in the right direction, then please just keep showing me, like, just keep showing me. And in that very moment, I kid you not, man, like, I felt something, like, I just felt something. And it was almost like an energy entered the room. I'm by myself. Nobody else is in the dorm. And I feel something. And I start crying. Like, I'm on my knees, bro. Nobody else is in the dorm. I'm on my knees. And I'm really, like, I just started crying. I can't tell you why I was crying. I just started crying. And at that same moment, for something. Yeah, I was, but at the same time, I felt like this presence, man. I felt like I wasn't alone, like something came into the dorm room with me.
You think maybe it's your ancestors?
And my understanding now, it was something. Because I will tell you this, the whole room lit up. It was just a brightness, a bright light, like a fuzzy, hazy brightness. And something like just swirled around, and I'm crying because I'm kind of like this, like, like this will freak you out. Like, spirits, people get into the spirituality game and think this is a game. It's not a game, man. Spirits are real, and you could end up seeing something that you don't know how to process, or because the way we're raised, most of us are raised, we live in fear. You know what I'm saying? Instead of understanding the power that we have and the beings that we are, like the beings that we are, man, we're a force to be reckoned with. We are, and instead we don't know that, and we're afraid of friggin' ants and bees that flying around us. That becomes obvious
in all of the wrong ways.
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, we learn that sometimes it takes that for us to learn that. But it was in that moment, man. I had this experience, and there was a Bible in front of me. I opened up the Bible, and I can't remember what book it was. I can't remember it, but it might have been something like Psalms or Proverbs or something. I just opened the book, and I looked down, and I just read the first thing that came to my eyes. And I kid you not, everything, it was the Bible. So yeah, it was still a tool of Christianity and all that. Don't mean it's not no wisdom in there. And the passage I looked down and I read, it answered every question I had. Like, all my fears and all the doubts, worried about going the wrong way, the words that were in that passage spoke to them specifically. And then from that point on, after that, I was like, all right, let's run with this, because at some point you have to be okay. And you have to understand that, listen, there's a deeper level to everything we've ever been taught. Like, there's different, like you started bringing down Nyabingi and all that. Most people never even heard of that. Most people don't even know of the connection between that and Queen of Sheba and the so-called Jews. Most people don't know about Philashas, the Philasha Jews out in Ethiopia. They got direct lineage. Most people don't, like, our concept of history and the things that have happened is warped. It's twisted, man. Like we've been lied to, man. Like Malcolm X said, we've been bamboozled, man. We've been hoodwinked.
I mean, yeah, and even if you were to tell people a lot of those things, like you said, there's like a fear, because what religion has really done is instilled a certain level of fear in people to the point where people fear their own culture. Because when we even really talk about Nyabingi, essentially what we're even talking about is a deity, which people are been taught to fear. So because it's like in terms of like, oh, looking at it as like another kind of like divinity or God, so people don't even want to touch that. So even like you see in certain communities, even that has been diminished. That has been watered down. Now it's just a simple spirit, but it's much bigger than the spirit. It's an entire deity.
But what you even said just now in terms of like any of these gods becoming like a deity for a person, right, is because a human being is only going to look for something that's greater than himself to find inspiration in. So, of course, you know, our first instinct is to go out into nature, but there's nothing necessarily that animates itself to us that sort of seems outside of our, you know, our concept of like what's real. But then when you start to have like experiences like Joe was talking about, something that's supernatural that you can't necessarily explain, or you can't put your finger on exactly what it is, then you become inspired because you know that there's something more that you can't, that's not tangible, that people may not be able to explain to you in a very concise and precise way. But it becomes because your story is very inspiring and interesting in the same, Joe, because there's that part where you were talking about how at one point it's like, you know, you were raised in this Catholic, you know, environment, and then, you know, you realize that there's something wrong with it, and then you move on throughout life, and then you come to this place where it's like, okay, I'm going to try something different. Now, the safety that you find in it is the connection to those same things that you know, were just coming from, which is, of course, a part of the journey and all of that. But it's like a lot of people don't realize that notion of like a deity or something that's greater than you, that you're sort of trying to shine with your speech, right? Those Catholic people that were teaching you whatever they were teaching you in Catholic school, they were just shining it for you to say like, this is what's great, this is what's amazing, this is what's gonna make your life better. And you, to some degree, it's like you had to latch on to it. And it's like, that's what I have for now. So yeah, that's the great thing about life. But then later on, it's like, oh, well, what about all of these? Oh, they have these negative connotations. It's spooky. 9 times out of 10, you see a movie with a African person in it and anything spiritual happening, it's some scary shit.
Or it's evil,
Somebody's
it's
dying.
dark,
You know
it's
what I'm saying?
voodoo.
There's
Voodoo.
shadows involved and all of that.
Everything's voodoo.
Even,
you know?
even Chucky, because it just was
voodoo,
Halloween,
man.
right?
Exactly.
You know Chucky. What is it? I did them do them
Yeah,
That's a whole deity.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Chucky got
For real.
raised by voodoo.
But yeah, it's a, you know, it's a very unfortunate part of a lot of our journeys growing up here in the West. But it is something that, you know, needs to be pointed out because it highlights something that's very important on people's paths, that sort of emotional connection